Hey guys, and welcome back to ScarletSprites. Today's video it's a little bit different than some of the things I traditionally do. I found the video footage of my LI Retro panel from August of 2022, and I didn't want to lose it, so I wanted to upload it and kind of have it saved for selfish reasons, really. But I thought I'd share it with all of you as well. A few people had asked back at the time if it would be posted. The issue is the video quality and the audio is not great from the source. I think it's 480p and you can hear the audio kind of goes in and out. I did my best to clean it up and do something with it. I found my original slide deck for this, and so I did an overlay for that. So it's a little bit easier on the eyes, but really it's more about the audio and listening to the crowd and myself tell stories. If you're interested in that, this might be for you. It's a little hard to hear, but I thought, hey, why not? We'll post it. If it's not for you, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks everybody for coming out to LI Retro this weekend, and thanks for having me back at LI Retro. I want to thank all the guys here who are putting the show together too, because I haven't been as popular with my social media lately because I had a baby for one, had some health issues, and these guys still had me back to come in and talk to you guys and do some arcade related talks, discussions, and see things here. So I do really appreciate that. So I guess we just jump right into it. And I want to make the discussion today interactive. I was putting a PowerPoint together, and I was thinking like this feels a lot like my job, and I don't want this to be my job, because I'm coming to LI Retro this weekend to have fun, and I want you guys to have fun too, and not feel like you're at your job listening to somebody go through a PowerPoint. So we need to talk, all right? So that's kind of the whole point of this. Really what I want to come away with, or I want you guys to come away with today, is just an appreciation for what's out on the floor here at LI Retro. I know a lot of people walk in, they see the arcade machines, and it's like, you think about, I used to play these games, and they were something that I remember from my childhood. And then you play it for a few seconds, and maybe you move on to something else, right? But there's a whole history behind a lot of those machines that are up there on the floor, just like anything else. Like when you're collecting baseball cards or comic books and things like that, the arcade machines have their own history as well. And it's something I want to dive into a little bit, and maybe just make you guys think a little bit about that when you're out on the floor. So for those who don't know me, who am I? I got into retro gaming just like a lot of you guys did. One of the things that was always on top of my mind was the arcade games and bringing them home, because that's the era I grew up in the 80s and in the 90s. And, during that time, a lot of you guys, just judging, I'm not totally judging, but looking at ages here, I'm guessing that you guys remember that as well, that you couldn't always get that arcade perfection at home. It wasn't something that was easy to replicate on the home console. Some of you probably remember playing Pac-Man on the Atari 2600, or at least seeing the pictures. It doesn't look like Pac-Man in the arcade at all, right? So the arcade was something that was always special to me, because I knew I could go there and I was going to see cutting edge technology used for my enjoyment, basically, like playing video games. And I always yearned to have that experience come home. Double Dragon was another one. I was a big fan of Double Dragon, and when it came out for the Nintendo, it's a cool game, but it's not quite the same as what it is in the arcade. So that's where I'm kind of coming from. So all this to say, my collecting for retro consoles and playing Nintendo, Super Nintendo, all that stuff, I started getting more and more into, well, what can I do that's arcade related? Because, at this point in my life, I was in my early 20s, and I'm thinking, like, I could expand this a little bit. And I started buying, I'll let you guys come up and see this when we're finished here. But I started buying Neo Geo MVS carts. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen an MVS cartridge. This is what runs inside of a Neo Geo arcade machine, right? And I had no way to play these. None whatsoever. I just thought they were cool. I knew they were from the arcade, and I was like, I'm going to buy Metal Slug, right? And and it just sat there, like in my one bedroom apartment. It just sat like that on a table, and I had no way to play it. And as time went on, I collected a few more of them, and this was probably early 2000s. So a lot of these cartridges weren't that expensive at that time. Some of them still aren't. Some of the common ones like King of Fighters and some of the ones that have been mass produced are somewhat cheap, but they weren't expensive hardly at all because no one was picking these up back in the day. I just thought they were cool. And again, my dream was I'm going to get a Neo Geo arcade machine at some point in my life, and I'm going to put these cartridges, they're going to put them in, and I'm going to play them. And so that's kind of where all of my arcade collecting started. It was with the Neo Geo. And last year, George and I did a panel. We called it the Neo Geo. It was the gateway drug to arcade gaming, because once you start that, it's a slippery slope going down that path. So right now, you can hold on that slide just for a second. So right now, a couple projects that I have in flight, going from just collecting cartridges and boards into full cabinets, which are becoming tougher and tougher to find. I used to be able to find those at auction or locally, a couple $100, and you could go through and I would work on restoring them. So becoming a little bit more difficult. Some of the last things I picked up, you can see in the bottom left there's an open ice, a Midway open ice cabinet. It uses the same cabinet as NBA Jam, which is on the floor upstairs. That was pretty beat up at the time. It didn't have any side art on it, missing the marquee. So all of that is new and a project I've worked on this summer. On the far right, the bigger picture is Killer Instinct. I just posted a picture of that or a video on Twitter not too long ago. I got the side art up on that. That was a Blitz 99 cabinet that it ran, but it didn't look too great on the outside. Blitz uses the same cabinet as Killer Instinct, which is something we can talk a little bit about today as well, just cabinet styles. I didn't know that when I was younger, that there were differences in the cabinets, right? Like different manufacturers use different designs. Midway used a lot of the same cabinets later in its life cycle. Towards the end, they were using this same Blitz-style cabinet for other games, and Killer Instinct thankfully used that, and I thought, well, that's a good opportunity to try to make a Killer Instinct cabinet. There's a Rampage board down there, just one of the raw boards that I've collected. So that's really who I am, just kind of a nerd who had a arcade collecting hobby spiral a little out of control. If you want to go down to the next slide for me. So I said this is going to be interactive. It's not going to be me talking the entire time. So the first thing I wanted to bring up, and this is open for anyone, is what sucked you into arcade gaming? And that could have been, in the 80s, the 90s, it could be more recently. For me, I always tell a personal story. My parents split when I was 2 or 3 years old. I lived with my grandparents until I left for college, actually here on the island. Kung Fu was, for whatever reason, it was sitting out at the Harrisburg International Airport. It was just sitting there. And I lived in the town where the airport is. The airport's actually in Middletown, Pennsylvania. But my grandfather would drive me over there and give me a quarter, and I would play Kung Fu. I thought it was like the greatest thing, because at the time I had Atari at home, and we just talked about Atari, and the graphics are a little blocky. They're not quite up to speed with where arcades are. But then I see this, and it's like, wow, you can kick people in the face. Like this is amazing, right? And like you got all these guys coming. I love Kung Fu Master. I would beg to go over to the airport. That was one of the things that sucked me in, and then Temple of Doom was another one. That was at the local mall. It's funny because I can still remember where it was, and it was like 2 or 3 machines back from when you went in the door. And I was a big Indiana Jones fan. I watched Raiders all the time. Temple of Doom comes out, I'm watching that. And then here's a video game with voices. And you could hear, like Harrison Ford's digitized voice, he hops out of the mine car and he says, we walk from here. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't even believe this. So you could, run around. So those are the 2 games I would say, for me, really sucked me in to arcade gaming. They've got, personal ties. My grandfather, Kung Fu Master. Indiana Jones, probably more so with my grandmother when she would go to the mall and I'd get drug along. And that was my reward for behaving at the end of such trips. But So I want to turn it over. Again, I'm not going to talk at you for an hour. What sucked you guys in? Tell us. Somebody tell me a story about what sucked you into arcade gaming. Yeah, let's hear it.
I had to be going to laundromats, doing laundry at my mom's.
Yeah,
And
right.
and then basically put in a couple of coins that she would give us, and we would play some Street Fighter 2.
Yeah.
What is it? Sengoku. Bro,
Yeah, from Neo Geo.
it was a good time. Great time.
And it's interesting because you just called out you were with your mom, right? There's always, like, at least for me, and a lot of times when I'm talking to people, there's always some type of either parental tie to things or maybe another family member or a friend. There's always some type of companionship involved in it. And I think that's really cool. Yeah. Yeah.
I remember Jillian's.
Okay.
Buster.
Yeah. What did you play?
I heard it would say a Street Fighter.
Oh yeah.
It's like Ace Combat.
Oh yeah. That's awesome.
And it was a sports buster or a summer camp.
Yeah.
Played Ninja Turtles there.
Yeah.
And then more older arcade games. Yes.
Summer camp?
Yeah, summer camp. Yeah. Went on trip to a sports bus.
Yeah.
And just did it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an arcade at Smith Haven Mall now, right? I think I saw it. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I haven't been to Smith Haven Mall in probably 25 years, but really, I saw some pictures online. I thought it looked really cool, but that's
It's a good place.
Cool.
Like this retro style, sort of like Nintendo, Super Nintendo, whatnot with CRT television.
yeah. Along with the machines, they have the console set up. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah, I want to hear it.
Mine was bowling alley story. Actually, he lived right behind the bowling alley. There were like, it's unfortunately, you want to sing to the gate that dragged me right into art because I was in prayer and they got parked. I saw this arcade machine with a little barrel on it. Ooh, a FPGA game company. I have to try it.
Yep.
So I went over there and that was it. The game, right? Put it in the corner. First played the game again. I was with my parents.
Yep.
And something hit me when I played the game, like pushed me against the wall. Like, holy crap, this game is so.
Yeah, Killer Instinct? Yeah. How about the audio? The audio for that game is wild. Like, it just is something that is.
Plus graphics too.
Yep.
So I actually went into research about how does it get arcade is you made. Then
Yep.
took it.
Yep. I love that.
And then my niece.
Oh yeah.
That's meeting with okay. Is more stories for it.
Nice. I like it. Anyone else? Yeah, let's hear it.
Our father, he worked NTA.
Here we go. Dad again, right?
Yes, Times Square. What's completely different place?
Place
Is
so it's like the arcade scene was like, it was crazy, sir. He would take me to arcades in Times Square.
Yep.
And the game that I played first time was Spider-Man the arcade thing.
Yeah.
so for me as a kid, to see Spider-Man in a video game, like it just like blew my mind.
Right. Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
That's the one upstairs.
Yes. You have it upstairs here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just remember me and my sister went to this restaurant called or something, and they had like a little arcade section.
You and your sister.
Yeah.
See? Again, family. Yeah.
He did some that Street Fighter 2, he was like blew my mind. It was amazing. We have Nintendo, Atari at home. But this was very different. Like Street Fighter 2 when it first came out was like crazy. So good. And we were so hooked, like, I had Genesis later, and then it came out for Genesis. We had like begged my parents, like split the birthday present or Christmas present or whatever. It was like $70 back then. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hands up.
Yeah, I remember Street Fighter 2 when that first, because I had seen so much about it in magazines and pictures, and when I went to the arcade, I saw it for the first time. Like you're saying, the graphics, everything, I'm like really sucked in. But I didn't understand the concept right away because I thought it was a beat 'em up in my mind after just looking at pictures, and I'm like, wait, it's only one other guy. Like it took me a minute, and then I realized, and then after a couple quarters, I'm like, oh wait, this is deep. Like this is really cool, right? This is spinned up a whole new genre almost. So anybody else? Yeah.
When I was a child, I used to go into a Saturday morning bowling league. And the bowling alley had an arcade in it. It was Bad One Bowl on Sunrise Island. And they had an arcade. And they had games like Star Castle and Venture.
Yeah. And those, no, it's Space Invaders was my gateway drug, and all that kind.
Yeah.
That was like the first one, but I eventually got to the point where I look more forward to going to the arcade every Saturday than going bowling. And on school holidays, I would ask my mom to bring me to bowling. I was and play there. And that's how it was then when I was a child. And that bowling alley had a regular rotation of arcade games, so they actually had a really good setup. But then also, like every business nearby my house had a video game or two in it. Like the donut store had Wizard Wars.
Yeah.
The pharmacy had Time Pilot. Well, it's still that because you should buy stuff from one place to the other.
I don't know what it was. Wizard of War was the only game my mom would play. I don't know why that is, but she loved that game, and we got it for Atari. I didn't get it for me. Got it for her. It was the only game she would play.
Bro, thank you for reading up Spacey by you because I'm here. Color is the keep suing and going, yeah, Nicole, this goes so Scott. But after Spacey, right, and I'll say my story is that after school, it was just always my friends and I got together. I even remember the name of the restaurant, Americata Restaurant. They were up in Bronx, New York. And they always had started with Space Invaders. They moved on to Asteroids, which is the one that really got me. Yep. And the thing about Asteroids, the interesting story now, going from Space Invaders, which was always a two-button game and shooting, and then you had like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons at Ross that you had to control. Thrust and rotate and hyperspace. We came up with a 2-player version with 2 people or co-op version of this, where one person would have the hyperspace and shoot, and I like it.
That's awesome.
Was the driver, and I was always the driver, and I would could thrust and rotate and we said all right now hyperspace shoot whatever.
And money probably went farther, right? Because you put one is 2 people play on one court. Whoa!
Okay, I got this order. Did you get the next orders? That was
Yeah.
But as far as a gang or somebody, I know Kung Fu Master Wonder, but for some reason, elevator action.
Oh yeah.
This up to this day, I can still hear it, right?
Yeah.
Still the music, everything, and I know Street Fighter 2. I have my youngest son. I don't know why. It's been so many versions of Street Fighters. I'm not talking about just the main Street Fighters and, you had versus Capcom and all that. But something about Street Fighter 2, not that. My youngest son, we play Street Fighter. Yeah. Sort of my
This is really an average. So piggybacking off of what my brother said, the one thing two things. One thing that we looked forward to is when we did Don't Feel on about to see what different type of arcades it would have.
Yeah.
And then the more memorable one other than Street Fighter that I remember is the Terminator 2 arcade Sega. Then like this, really fast. There weren't enough quarters.
That was just a phenomenon, right? Because you had the movie coming out, you had Arnold, it was the blockbuster, you had the guns that made like you could, as soon as you walked in the arcade, you knew they had it if they weren't broke, right? Because these guns like went out all the time. Yeah. Oh yeah. But yeah, Terminator 2, phenomenal. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
In Japan, turned about the years ago, the like arcades that I forgot the nasals in, but I remember going there and playing Simpsons arcade.
Oh yeah.
It got I remember it got closed down to get a sushi, and now it got closed down.
Yeah. You got Simpsons upstairs.
We got Simpsons up
Yep.
there.
They never. What? Baseball? The space. No, I can't remember coming there. It's actually that's not an 2000. I'm a late 90s or old. Yeah, or just.
Go ahead. You got a story in the back?
You guys know all sent the
ANC over there, I'm by Coles and by Deep Kitties. It was a boost of the multi-fidelity. Way back before there was the kid, and they were. That was just more the days they were keenish there. And that was
the only place I ever remember seeing the original Street Fighter 1.
Oh yeah.
Now,
it wasn't the street, but they readapted it to make it 6-button. Well, the first of the before it was a 6-button that had these two big.
The pressure. Yep, I remember. Yes. I don't think I've ever seen it ever. Yeah, with the pressure buttons. Yeah, I've never seen that.
Go ahead, street.
All right, I'm gonna move on to just another slide here. So this is great though. This is exactly what I wanted. So I wanted to talk a little bit about like history on the floor. And it seems like everybody in the room here so far has got like good stories, good memories, right, about playing in the arcade, being with friends or family members. And I would just want to go back real quick, as we were talking about appreciating some of that history. That these machines that are up there are relics, like true relics, and we're getting older, right? Like at least I am, and it's like these machines aren't young anymore either. So the first thing I want to call attention to is, I don't know if you will scroll down. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to play it, but Computer Space up on the floor, 1971. This is basically the first commercial arcade machine like ever. This is the grandfather, and it's up on the floor. You guys can go up. You can, when we're done here, you can play it. I think it sold like about 1,500 machines, maybe a little less. George is the expert. George is, okay. Yeah. It was a little bit of a disappointment, right?
It was not the biggest commercial success.
Right. It's based on a game called Space War, which I think computer programmers, were playing on mainframe. Yeah, exactly. And so these guys put this together and put it out and thought, hey, we could sell this and get people playing it. And that was your first arcade machine, really, in the 70s. And you can see, I took this picture from a video I did last year. Those are original boards. So that's another important thing to call out for LI Retro here. We're in a museum, and I think that's really important. When we go home and we do things and we do whatever it is we have to do to play these games. It could be emulation, right? It could be Mister. It could be Raspberry Pi. However, consoles, however we want to play them at home. But I think that's really cool here at LI Retro that they go back to the original hardware. So you've got the original monitor that's not an LCD running on Computer Space, right? And you guys did some major repairs on this to get it running, right?
Project, get that thing going.
Right. So this is as real as it gets. This is, it's if you walked into a bar to play Computer Space in the 70s, you'd have the same experience today as you would then. Thanks to these guys. Yeah.
Here's a fun fact. Computer Space came in the same year as Apollo 14 and Hall 5 the moon missions were still going on at the time.
That's a good point, right? Like I think like the whole space race thing was very popular in culture at that time, so there's another history tied to that, which that's really cool. Yeah.
Fun fact: the first successful arcade machine is to be fun even older game. That was based the then can test for two.
There you go.
Big one test for two, which is even an older game. Yeah. I think the Space War.
Yeah. All right, so I'm cutting from the 70s into the 90s. We're trying to cover all our bases here. So NBA Jam, I saw that up on the floor, and I wanted to say this. Has anyone read NBA Jam the book? Did anybody take now for it? You should definitely check that out. Rayan Ali wrote that book, and it covers not just NBA Jam, but Midway's history kind of through the 90s. There's little pieces of it. It's really cool. Midway was basically almost like a frat house. the way they were developing games, tubes out on, CRT tubes just open on desks. Guys just kind of like, hey, what kind of ideas you got for a game? And they would just go and do it. It wasn't really like it is today. These guys got away with a lot, but also made a lot of really cool stuff because it was like this open environment. The game earned $2 billion in revenue, which is unbelievable. It literally made Mark Turmel, who's pictured there and inserted himself in several of the different versions of NBA Jam, made him a millionaire. And that's talked about in the book a little bit, which is really cool. I put another screenshot in here. It's probably hard to see from where you guys are, but there's Mortal Kombat characters that are in NBA Jam. It's NBA Jam Tournament Edition up until version 2, and the NBA freaked out. Was like, get that out of our game. We're not giving you our license, right, to have NBA Jam, because that was, you remember back in the 90s, that was a big controversy, Mortal Kombat, all the violence, the gore, everything that's going on. And the NBA's like, these guys snuck these characters into our NBA Jam game. We don't want anything to do with this, so get it out. So for myself, I have an NBA Jam Tournament Edition board at home, and it was version 3. And the first thing I did was take those chips out, and I put version 2 on so I can play as Reptile when I play NBA Jam, because that's very important. So I don't know, did anybody have a chance to play NBA Jam upstairs? Anybody get it? Yes, G, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there was showing the turn. I mean, you have like a unique knife to say to it.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Does anybody know the blonde picture here? Anybody know who that is? It is. Yes, Carrie Hoskins. Yes, yeah. She's Sonya. I think in Mortal Kombat 2 and 3. She's the model, and she's also Revolution X that's here, I think, out in this hangar. Yeah, the side art on Revolution X, that's Carrie Hoskins dressed up as the villain for the Revolution X arcade game. And I'm trying to think, I know she's in Showtime, which is, again, also here at Long Island Retro. You can go up and play that. She's a character you can play as in Showtime. So yeah, NBA Jam, definitely get a chance if you get a chance to check that out, you should go up and give that a shot. Another machine that I'm fond of, especially recently, I've been working on getting Robotron running on a Smash TV cabinet at home, but these guys have Robotron up on the floor. I know that's something you were talking about, some of our older games, right? Go ahead.
I don't know how I was ever able to play that gear. Honestly, I just go down to the point, but like what? The tweak, the tweets.
Yep.
Everything just coming at you.
Yep.
Amazing. I can't play it now. I'm not 5 seconds ago, but yeah, that's one of the greatest.
Oh yeah. So this has a tie. Eugene Jarvis developed this game, and I think I'm trying to remember. I think he injured his hand, and he was playing Berserk, which I get it up on the floor at Long Island Retro. Berserk. He was playing Berserk, and he realized that he only needed to hold down the button in Berserk, and moving the stick kept his character in place, but you could still shoot. And so he was playing a lot of that game, and that inspired creating Robotron, which I thought was really cool. At the time, he thought putting 2 sticks on the machine, and I've seen him interviewed, and he laughs about this now, but he thought this was the future. He thought, like, everybody's going to do 2 sticks. Everything's going to be a twin stick game. Like, we'll get rid of the buttons, and everything's going to go this direction. Didn't quite happen that way. I was trying to think of some modern game, not modern, but later games, I should say, that did use the twin sticks. I don't know if you consider maybe, that's what I was going to say, Virtual On is kind of that way. Is it Title Fight? Sega Title Fight, the boxing game that has 2, right? The Sega expert in the back, G? Yeah, you would know that, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Virtual on. They didn't do, but there's several of us like that, and then just all that came home.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's because there's a stick for Dreamcast, right? There's a twin stick. What do you got?
Brass boss.
Yeah.
They just kept the virtual on tree going.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't think it quite took off the way he thought it would, but we had some version of twin sticks happening, but not quite what Eugene had thought. But yeah, I mean, kind of what we were just talking about. This was difficult to port home, especially at the time that we were talking about the Atari and games like that, where they're not quite the same. How do you replicate this on an Atari? Yeah, it just wasn't quite the same. But Really cool that it's here at LI Retro up on the floor, and I made a few goes at it yesterday. I didn't do quite as well as I thought I would, but yeah, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Oh, Punch Out. Yeah. So this is a machine. I've tried to get this for myself several times, and at this point, it's just astronomically expensive. It's just crazy. It's like out of hand. Like you can't. One of the things that's really cool about Punch Out, I don't know. Obviously, I think a lot of people know Mike Tyson's Punch Out for NES, which was inspired by this. Arguably, maybe even the better game in some regards, but I think everybody probably knows Shigeru Miyamoto, right? Yeah. Everybody knows who that is. He designed the characters for this. So that's a big piece of history right there. Again, George, it's up on the floor, right? It's up on the floor at Long Island Retro. The dual monitor design, so you can see the top monitor is kind of like your title and your fight card, and then the action's happening on the bottom screen. And one of the reasons for this, Nintendo went all in on using two monitors, is they had so many left over from Donkey Kong. They were making Donkey Kong machines like crazy and just shipping those out, and they ended up with like this surplus of CRT monitors. So they're like, we got to use these things up. So they figured out like, okay, well we could make this look impressive and put two monitors in it and start doubling up, which I thought was interesting. The other cool thing about this is the music and the score for this was composed by Koji Kondo, who also does Super Mario Brothers and Zelda. So that's a big piece of history in my mind. So you see, I'm getting excited about this kind of stuff. Like I just love seeing this stuff on the floor. And you know, we talked a little bit about the cabinets themselves and the designs, but there's people behind all of these games too. There's people, there's artists, there's composers, game designers, and some of the the beginnings that like Miyamoto, who would later go on to do all kinds of wonderful things for Nintendo, had some of his early starts here. So scroll to the next slide. So we'll pause for a little bit, for just a second from ripping through different machines, and I was kind of curious because I think we live in a really good time right now where you have so many options available to you to play arcade games at home. And hardware isn't really, modern hardware, it's not really constrained anymore. Like you have enough horsepower to run a lot of these games from the 80s and 90s. The Raspberry Pi, we were just talking yesterday with a few people out on the floor, the Raspberry Pi 4 will even run like Sega Naomi games at this point, and the Thomas Wave games, and like Dreamcast in a sense. So it's pretty impressive that these little boards are able to do that. So I was curious, like do you guys play arcade games? Are you guys still doing that? Are you playing mostly consoles? And even the consoles themselves, the virtual stores. I mean, that's all Neo Geo games that are available on Switch, which is unbelievable to me that you can just go in and I spent probably too much money buying cartridges back in the early 2000s, and I could just go into the Switch and download them. But yeah, it's really cool. I also I brought this along. You guys can come up after if you want to see it. So this is a super gun, and some of you guys are probably aware of what that is. But this basically just takes an arcade board and allows you to hook it up to your standard television. So if you have a CRT, this has, well, you can see the jacks in the back for the RCA jacks for audio. I think I put the cable away. There's a VGA, or you can use component video to plug this into a CRT. If you run it into a scaler like the Retro Tank or OSSC, you can hook it up to an LCD. This is a Neo Geo MVS board, and you can it just connects right like this, and then you can play Neo Geo games at home, and the cartridge just goes right in the top of the slot. So that's a really cool thing. So just curious, just opening up the floor a little bit for comments again. How are you guys playing at home? Is everybody running a Mr. Pies? Yeah? Go ahead.
But I have a question. I have an IGS PGM, right?
Oh, yeah.
And but what type of super gun do you use for that?
You could use this. I've used, yeah. It's standard JAMA. So I actually that was one of the first boards. I just got this like last month, and that was one of the first games I was playing. Knights of Valor. I fired that up and like that. Yeah.
So built.
Yeah. Yeah. In the back.
Yeah, so I've been using Mister for about a year and a half now. Absolutely, it's an amazing focus source project. Where I'm running into now is there are some controllers like the DualStar 5 that have incredibly good response times with, like, even wireless, it's less than 10 milliseconds. Yeah. But then you run a game where I want to try to start fabricating more accurate controls, things like trackballs or the like. And do you know any like examples of like wiring that sort of like game-specific hardware and stuff?
Yeah, I know a lot of that, especially on Mister, becomes core dependent too. Whether or not like it was developed and it's there for them to exploit. So usually I'll take a pass on this one. I go to Mister add-ons all the time. I just ask him. I'm like, what can I use and what works? And he's usually pretty responsive. Because I'm like you, I use USB controllers a lot. I was using Snack for a while, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just not that good at games anymore. But to me, I'd rather use, like, I have an Astro City 6-button control. I love that controller, and I plug that in and use that on Mister all the time. And I don't even really use the Snack option anymore. But I go to him. I don't really. I can't really. I know there was a spinner option he was working on for like Forgotten Worlds and a few of those things, but I don't really. Yeah, that's a good. We'll go to Twitter with that later today, maybe.
I can add on to that a little bit. It's not official. It's not officially supported, but Listbox. Makes a blister to this USD, or he puts his HDMI reports on it. If it goes into lower level API, like goes right because it's every cable, and like his sub is you have to use options to the cores. Like someone keeps the existing cores updated, you gotta like download them because he won't open source his own stuff. It's like, or he makes it. Yeah, it's for it. Yeah. But I don't know what the guy's name is. I've followed him for like a decade, but he has a lot of compatibility. It's a lot of stuff. And he said that most things that work for the Blissbox, which he has like pages of like compatibility of all different controllers and stuff, should work. I don't know if it's 100% what works on the PC with Blissbox will work on the Mister. Yeah, there's a lot that does.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I'll also follow. There you go. Sure. I didn't date it a while, but I got into like controllers started becoming a thing that you get into. I usually just buy USB, but same thing that you're talking about when I started getting into like rear controllers. I wanted to get like an Atari paddle working on it. There's a guy who makes I forget. I wish I remembered. But what he called it, but he makes the software that you can install on Arduino, and I bought a little paddle, and a Ruby size. I think I did have to buy a new pentometer for it, because the old one was like rusted and bent or whatever. But and it was like the first time I did anything like this. But it's a relatively easy project. Like replace the inside, hook it up to the Arduino. The Arduino's small enough to fit inside the paddle. And then I was able to close up the paddle. So the paddle looks exactly the same, but now it has a USB Richings. Yeah. And like go right into it. And I was able to plug it into a Mistress also worked. And yeah, so like you could do some cool stuff like that on that thing. Yeah. Cool. And I had an excuse to talk about my project.
No, that's great. I love it. What game was that for? Because that's a lot of work. You must really like the game you were.
So this is the weird thing. Like I didn't really grow up with Atari, so it wasn't like that. But I wanted to start playing it on there. I think the main one. I'm suddenly forgetting the names. I'm embarrassing. It's the equivalent of Arkanoid, but the Atari Gorilla. Right, Gary? That was the one that I wanted, and I played a few of the other ones, just like a surface game, and then. But yeah, the weird thing is, I spent more time on the project probably than using it.
So it's time in making the craft and actually enjoying it.
Egomania. Have you ever played that? It's on Atari. Give it a shot. It's Egomania. It's basically just like there's this chicken that runs around and drops eggs, and then you're a guy in the bottom. He's got a bowl on his head, and you just go back and forth trying to collect. And then if you miss, the egg yolk builds up and basically drowns you. So it's I don't know. It's worth it for if you went through the effort, give that one a shot too. Yeah. That's awesome.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I clearly want for King Bona because I want this that.
Yeah.
Since Kilristy is very hard to emulate on an arcade Bona. So we pain what trying to emulate that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's and then
King very much.
in the center there, that's actually my desktop in my office. I run MAME. Every now and then I get somebody in the comments on videos talking about I think people seem to think that I don't appreciate MAME, and I love MAME. I have a MAME setup. Our MAME is an arcade enthusiast's best friend. There's a lot of testing that you can do with code in MAME to make sure that stuff runs the way it should.
We try to put it at the Raspberry Pi 4 that doesn't run that well.
Right. Sure, there's limitations for...
PC it will work fine.
Yeah, exactly. There's...
Why in the arcade?
Yeah, right.
That song.
But you like to have it where I wanted the other arcade machine with their arcade buttons.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I know.
Authentic.
That's why. And then all with arcade sticks is that they could play moves around.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So you rather have secure arcades.
I tried to get, we were talking about Showtime a little earlier. I tried to get that running on the Raspberry Pi 4. It just doesn't, it's too slow. It just can't quite keep up with Showtime yet. There's some of those later games that just aren't quite there for, unless you're on like a beast of a machine. Yeah, even today. Anybody else? Yeah.
For arcade gaming, like to get as close to the original as possible, I managed to latch on to an original Xbox loaded the coin-op spy. Bang, it had lots and lots and lots of ROMs stored on it.
Yep.
And an X-Arcade tank stick.
Yep.
And that does pretty well as far as giving you like the real arcade experience, except it's unplayable for games like Star Wars Arcade, which are upstairs, one of my favorite all-time games. Yep. So but for basically joystick and button games, that's really that's a nice setup. But I also find that even like the console gaming and playing arcade adaptations for like the pre-crash systems, so to speak, like the Atari 2600, 5200, 7800. There's some really great stuff out there now from AtariAge. AtariAge was selling stuff that was made by Champ Games. They have the adaptation of Wizard of War Arcade and Wharf Arcade.
My mom will be pleased.
Plug the Atari Vox into your Atari compatible unit. I'm using a 7800, say demodified. Plug in the Atari Vox, hook up speakers to it, and the wizard is walking to you through the speakers, and you're getting... They use ARM processors on those cartridge boards from the Champ Games AtariAge.
Yeah.
And you're getting something that's as arcade perfect as you could get out of the 2600 hardware. And the games are flat out amazing. Compared them to the old CBS games that we got, like in the early 80s. What AtariAge and Champ Games did was absolutely incredible. And again, adding the voice to it is an absolute game changer. Hearing Gorf talking to you, fully speaker, as the wizard talking to you. I think Gorf and the wizard are the same guy because
right.
But that's getting a lot of my time. That's cool. If you want to earn those patches on the Gorf arcade game, I had to send back to Champ Games to get patches desired. And I've been playing that a lot lately. But there's a company called Ed Ladden. He does, AtariAge sells his sticks, but you crawl on his website directly. And he sells sticks that will look like Atari 2600, 7800. He even makes a folded box stick. Okay. And these are high quality, square box. I got one for ColecoVision, I got one for my 7800. I want to buy the Robotron stick. Yeah. So it's really great. And you get all of the buttons that would be on the Coleco Super Ration controller. And it gives you like a perfect whole version of Star Trek and Front Line just about, like on the ColecoVision. But you have to have a good controller for it, not the ColecoVision.
Yeah. Sure, that's true. Thanks. Did you have something you were...
You were talking about Midway before.
Oh, yeah.
About Midway. Between like consoles and arcades. I remember one time I was at a random, I think it was like either a Dayton Lusters or like one of those kind of places over in Florida. And I'm a big fan of the Thunder series, so Hyper Thunder, Upper Thunder, Thunder. There was a game there called Hyperdrive, which was a hovercraft style game that in the name something like Hydro Thunder. And this was like over a decade ago, and I've never seen that cabinet anywhere. So my question for you that I had was, and not just necessarily Midway, have you ever seen that game? And has there been an arcade game that you've seen in your battles that you've only seen once, as you've been dying to play again?
I was gonna say, was it Hyperdrive or H2 Overdrive? No, H2 Overdrive. Oh yeah, that's the Raw Thrills. That's exact. I mean, it's basically the spiritual sequel to Hydro Thunder.
This part was more like, it was kind of like Wipeout, but you had full free, like you actually had full. Okay, that's hard to put out. That was kind of like that too. I forgot the name. But yeah, I was wondering is,
I don't know that
one arcade game you only see once. You've never seen again. You want to see it again.
I would say for me, I wouldn't say once, but Hershey Park had Time Traveler when I was a kid, and I used to play that. And it was such an expensive game at the time. I think it was like they were charging like $1.50, $2 a play, and that was in the '90s, right, or late '90s, maybe mid '90s, and it was just so expensive. It's basically like Dragon's Lair or Space Ace, which is on the floors, Long Island Retro. But yeah, it's that whole. It's not really like a hologram. It's a like a projection underneath, and there's a piece of glass, and it looks like the guys are. Yeah, it looks like the guys are floating. But yeah, I haven't played that in I don't know how long. That's the only place I ever knew that had it, and I love playing it, even though it's kind of a crappy game.
I never seen it. That's I my bucket.
What, Time Traveler? Oh,
Say so. Like, I told my bucket was on low.
I know there's a place. You're
I think in the hand there was arcade. Yeah, arcade daytime.
Do they? Okay, I know because you're Houston area. I know.
No.
Okay, so I know there was a guy who had one for sale, and then it was listed as sold, and I was kind of curious, and I said, "Would you unload it for?" And he said he sold it for $10,000. It was fully working. It had the marquee on the back and everything, and he sold it to a place in Texas that used it as their centerpiece when you come in the door for an arcade, but I can't remember the name. This was probably 5 or 6 years ago. But yeah, I'll have to go back and see if I can find that conversation. I know it ended up in Texas. Yeah. Yeah.
I would bother.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. Dan, did you have Okay.
Using it.
Yeah, I have a Mister, but for some reason I cannot set up controllers on there. And I've tried to set it up, and I know that you supposedly need a keyboard, but when I try it, the games just don't function. You have any tips or any ideas?
Yeah, let's talk when we wrap here. Yeah. We'll talk. We probably can get you squared away.
Okay.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead.
My jam is like light guns.
Okay.
So mine was like the Time Crisis. The problem was we were playing that Bangdint on today because all TVs are LCD. You can't play them on television like that. I'm based for like a CRT. It was like, well, there's no way to play light gun games, with at home because I can only do it in an arcade apparently, but like up here, or.
Yeah, I know there's some modern solutions to that. The Sinden light guns, right?
I got two. I haven't started mess with. Heard it's a pain. Yes, I've seen it, but I haven't started about it. But the one thing is like centric bars, like Wii and stuff. Yeah, right. Not quite the same because you're not pointing at the TV. You're pointing at centric bar.
I played Mad Dog McCree on Wii a little bit ago because I was curious. I just wanted to, and you're right. It's kind of like moving a mouse as opposed to actually just
the insert spot.
Yeah, the snappiness just isn't quite there. Yeah, it's a little different.
Is your Tron Time Crisis? Was it one it's on PS3? Time Crisis 4.
The one had the specific Uncon board. I believe that's a official controller. Yeah. Does they personally no. Yeah, I know it. Because I'm not sure how accurate that one is. But I know when they try to do a PlayStation move, it's like...
When anybody bought it,
Yeah, there's that little bit of a... Yeah.
no, but original one and stuff like that, you can't do it.
Yeah. So, I'll try to jump through a few slides here. We're down to about 10 minutes, and I want to give you guys time for questions. And I got some stuff up on the table I want you guys to be able to look at if you want to. Obviously, Tron, I don't know if you guys had a chance to play that. I put this on here. It's in ScarletSprites' opinion, it is the best looking arcade cat. I just love the way this machine looks. I love the line detail, the neon, the sticks, just the way that whole cabinet is just
beautiful. And you have a really good representation of that cabinet here. It looks great. Played it a little bit yesterday. I was curious. This is one. Yeah, it's up there. As soon as you go into the hall, it's on the left.
It's the first thing you'll see when you enter the hallway.
Yeah. So this is one of the things we don't have time to get into, but the stick for this is kind of it's on the right-hand side, right? And some of the machines early on did have sticks on the right-hand side, and then they move over to the left. I sometimes catch myself. I'll play cross-handed. Like I'll use my left hand. I do that for Centipede too, even with the trackball. Because I want to use my left hand. I was curious. Did anybody else ever do anything weird like that? Yeah. Yeah.
Depends on the game.
Yeah. So Tron's up there. Yeah. Yep. Star Wars. We just talked about that. Phenomenal. You think about what this is. So this has a special type of monitor in it, a vector monitor, and it simulates that whole 3D effect long before anybody was really doing 3D games and first-person perspectives. They found a way to kind of mimic this and give you that experience. I think that's really cool. I think more recently there's been parts available for those monitors to fix, because that was a big problem for a while, that the Amplifone monitors would break, and then it's kind of like, well, what are we going to do? And you're right. Right, and now we've got parts and we can restore them. Great example of this up on the floor. I played that. That's actually, I think, the last game I played before I left last night at around 9 o'clock. Using the yoke, again, that's always really cool. Like you're actually piloting a ship, which was really cool at the time. It wasn't just a traditional arcade stick and some buttons. You had the actual yoke to fly your X-Wing. It's such a great game. I've never played. I know there's an Empire Strikes Back kit for this that you can go into other. I've never played that. You have?
I played it. There was a convention outside earlier this year in April in Florida, and they actually added one of each. They had a style look Empire Strikes Back in it, so I got a chance to play that for the first time. And they had a sit down one too.
Oh yeah, the cockpit. Yeah.
Sit down one is that they said, okay, hour to warning. CS start. That was 10 months. All right. And it was cool.
That's cool. Yeah, I've never played Empire Strikes Back.
Okay, yes. It was one of those cases where a lot of arcades were reluctant to upgrade to the Empire, right?
Yep.
Because you can't go back.
Yep.
Yep. That's what I know that.
So, Neo Geo, I snuck this slide in here. I know this is up on the floor. Is this the first year, George, that this is up there?
This is the first year. I didn't have one last.
Yeah. So the Neo Geo MBS arcade unit is up there. This is where my heart lies. I played a lot of Neo Geo back in the day. It's we've already talked about. That's the system I started first collecting for. It's the gateway drug to arcade gaming. This, if we were lacking on conversation at all, I figured this slide could derail me for another hour. So we don't have time for that today. But we did. What George and I talked about last year. We did. Yeah. I thought people don't want to hear about Neo Geo anymore. They're probably. So, some of you guys know this is a one-slot board. Takes one cartridge, and that's it. You can swap them pretty easily, just like you would a console. But there are 2 4-slot versions, as well as a big 6-slot board too. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a slick. Sometimes at the beach the boardwalks is where they had those, because you need so much space. I don't even know if they fit through a standard doorway, to be honest. I know they're huge and they weigh a ton. Also, the 6-slot board, I know, has a lot of warping problems because you're putting these cartridges down on this long, and so the center, it starts to dip and then you run into problems. So I know it's cool from a collecting standpoint, but I know functionality-wise, some people tend to stay away from the 6-slot boards. But overall, when this thing came out, Neo Geo was the most powerful hardware that was available at the time. This hit the floor in 1990. Nothing would even touch it until I think it was with the CPS2. Capcom came out with that, because this was even ahead of the first CPS system. But CPS2 really was the only system to come in and kind of, okay, now we can kind of take advantage of this. The other thing I think is really cool because of that, and this was a time, the 90s, quantum leaps were taking place with hardware. It was like every 6 months. I mean, some of you guys into computer gaming probably even knew this. Every 6 months there's some other thing coming out, and it's expensive, but we got it, and now this is what you need to run the latest games. SNK put this out in 1990, and they were still, King of Fighters 2002, 2003 was still coming out 13 years later for this system. That thing lasted more than a decade and was supported. That's hard to believe, especially in that time. So really an impressive system in my opinion. And I actually love the non-fighting games. Not that I don't like the fighting, but I don't knock League Bowling. If you've never played it, League Bowling is awesome. It is the best party game. It's easy for a casual just to pick up and play. And there's so many things that you can do that are, once you know the game, you can. It gets a little bit deeper, but it's a fun party game.
Neo Geo and sports games.
Meet Turf Masters. Yeah. That might be the best game on the system, right? Like, I'll just say it. It might be the best. Yeah.
It feels to me like beat 'em up games died with Neo Geo sort of made it all. Native, I mean, I would say the Blue Ninja Troubles game is great, and even the Streets of Rage or so. Yeah. But it feels like when Neo Geo started waning into the waning period, beat 'em ups just completely went by the wayside.
I mean, I think the genres kind of speaking for myself, I was kind of getting tired too at the end of all of this. Like there were so many 2D fighters, and and SNK was doing one every year with like King of Fighters is still a series. It just started becoming like, well, what is new? Actually, that's a good segue. I think, do we have time? Yeah, 2 minutes.
Or Street Fighter 2,
You could jump. So I gave them both the slide. We've actually talked a lot about Street Fighter 2 and Midway, but we haven't brought up Mortal Kombat here today. But yeah, I mean, Street Fighter 2 was just a huge phenomenon. I mean, that was it. That was, I was too young for Pac-Mania. Like, I knew it was a thing. I knew there was merchandise. I knew people were talking about it, but I wasn't like in the arcade. I was just too young. Street Fighter 2 might be the closest thing in my mind that I had to think of. This is a video game arcade phenomenon. Like, this is wild.
So I remember at Times Square we used to play for money or bill.
I could see that.
Yeah, so I bought a machine and somebody would come and slaying $5 on him. Shoot, everybody was going.
Love that.
I love that. Yeah. You're doing that right now.
So I'll ask this question: do we have? Is there anybody that prefers Mortal Kombat over? It's not. There's no wrong answer. Just ask. In the beginning, yeah. For me, it wasn't until Mortal Kombat 2 that I started to take notice. Like the first one, I remember I left Street Fighter when I saw Mortal Kombat. I played it, and there's just something, I don't know, with the first game I'd never really connected with. It just felt slow, a little bit sluggish. I liked the graphics and what they were doing and trying something different. But when 2 came out, I was like, okay, that's when I really sunk my teeth into Mortal Kombat. And we'll do one last slide if we got time. So the only thing that really stole my money from Street Fighter 2 was Virtua Fighter. When Virtua Fighter first hit the arcade, that blew my mind almost in the same way that Street Fighter 2 did. And Sega really, I think, this is probably your jam, right? Like Virtua Racing, the whole 3D craze. And I think about this a little differently now because I was listening to, again, Eugene Jarvis, who we talked about earlier. I was listening to him talk at a panel one time, and he said that 3D gaming was really the death of arcades. That really depressed me at the time when he said that, because he's right. It was kind of like the first domino to fall. So even though like I love Virtua Fighter 2, awesome game, right? So good. And I was, stealing, I started gravitating away from Street Fighter to play these games. It was a time where, now this was early. I mean, this was like, I think Virtua Fighter, I want to say is like 93. It's pretty early, but Street Fighter was 91, Mortal Kombat 92, and then we're right into the 3D era of gaming. And that's when, one more slide maybe, the gap starts to close on hardware. And that's when I think things really turned. I think, is my interesting fact on here? It's mod. I want to say, I think it was 1997 was the first year that home console revenue surpassed arcade revenue. And that was a big flag that things are changing. Yeah. So, but I threw these pictures up. The Sega STV in the bottom is the Die-Hard cartridge for that. That's basically a Saturn. It is. So it's arcade hardware, but it's a Saturn. The Sega Naomi, it's basically a Dreamcast. So this is where all that gap starts to close, and I think arcades began to fade a little bit. We got the Sega, Nintendo, and Namco Triforce, which is an interesting mashup of hardware of those three companies all coming together. But that's basically a GameCube. I mean, it even looks like a GameCube. But yeah, it's this is when things start to kind of, I don't know, George, do you have anything? Maybe on the candy cabs.
We got a Naomi.
Okay.
We have an MVC2 with a Naomi. Okay. Certainly in the candy cabs we do. Yeah, I want to get a Tiger. I don't have one yet, or a Triforce, but yeah.
Was Traxxas? I'm sorry. Was the Traxxas the one that they use for SAS or is it for the Orient part?
Yeah,
It's either the Triforce or the Chihiro. I can't remember, but F-Zero is on one of those two.
I think it's Heroes Triforce too.
Okay.
I think it is.
Yeah, that's a cool cabinet too. That's not here at LI Retro, unfortunately, but that's a really cool machine. Yeah. So I know we're at time. I don't know if we're over. It's lunchtime, so sorry to.
Want you feel anything on this?
I got a few minutes if I can stay. Okay. Yeah. If you guys want to, I can take questions. I have stuff up here on the table. You guys want to check out Neo Geo? I got a Neo Geo controller, which I actually brought just to show the super gun that we were talking about earlier. That's the ports on this for a controller. So you just plug that in and off you go. So you can play your arcade games with that. Retro Frog, also Todd's Nerd Cave on Twitter. He has an adapter that plugs into a Neo Geo port that lets you use a Super Nintendo controller. So you could do that with this, which is really cool, or play Neo Geo. What's that? No clicky. No. I'm a big fan. Yeah. Also, I think next week is it 8BitDo is releasing a wireless version of this, which is SNK BAT too. So that comes out next week. Yeah.
Micro Switch is supposed to be a 1-1.
It is. That's what they have that exploded diagram of So I'm pretty excited to see how that goes. Does anybody have questions? Anything that I can?
That's my question.
Yeah.
I have problems with my Mister.